some months. Many of the components of the learning group around Inland Academy are coming from different backgrounds, from landscape to art to also many of them with training in agriculture and farming. Just in particular, for example, we studied about the global movements and agrarian studies in Netherlands, in Macedon, and I've been looking at the movement of food sovereignty. So since the beginning, of course, for all our activity as well in Campo Adentro, part of the European Shepherds Network, and WAMIP, it's always has been the lighthouse to look at the way in which Via Campesina galvanized the feeling of the need to offer a response to global capitalism and how that affects, as I said, the very basis of life, not only even food and farm systems. And since I think the year 2000, when I happened to be part of the first conference with Paul Nicholson and so on, has been a very important guidance and inspiration. So I think it's a great opportunity to have today with us Paula Gioia, that is part of the farmer themselves in a cooperative here in Germany. Also originally coming from Brazil, so it's also important to understand the way that we talk about countrysides that are also in flow, and open to everybody. And then also Tyler is Via Campesina for the youth coordination from North America, and happening to be in Europe today, so that's great to have both of your contribution and testimonies. Paula has been very much engaged in the global process of Via Campesina as being part of the global coordination, especially focusing, for example, on what was the campaign for the declaration of peasant rights and people living in the rural areas. We will be recording and for the people who are not here from the Inland Academy, if you don't mind. That the camera is in the other side. And the committed engagement of Paula, especially of Paula Tyler. That Paula very much is focusing as well on the global level in the IPC, as well as the recent contestation regarding the UN Food System Summit, and how that has meant a progressive dismantlement of the structures that civil society and social movements and the food sovereignty movement have for so many years achieved. So instead of like as you said, having a structured form of presentation, I thought on maybe crossing some questions and having like a conversation, and also open to your questions, because yesterday we had a more theoretical talk about forms of collective action and the need to overcome individual scope of action, but maybe we were missing a little bit the possibility to understand how this happens in practice and also beyond the arts. The person who spoke yesterday was actually saying that the collectives that he had studied, he's a sociologist, has studied to be more successful, were not related with arts. They were more related with other fields, or when there is a mix between artists and farmers and so on, because they tended to see that the more successful, apparently, but I'm just quoting, successful forms of collective organization were related with sharing resources at very basic level. Anna was proposing the idea of starting with a mystica, but maybe the possibility we have, as we haven't been working on a proper mystica beforehand, and that involves also a moment of coming together and sharing that common goal, that would shape the form of mystica. Maybe we can start by talking about that possibility, like, in your opinion, what do you think that the forms in which Via Campesina is being built in every day, built in every movement, in every gathering, in every meeting, and the way in which we relate to each other despite the differences, despite being from West Africa, or being from South America, or being from Europe. In which way do you think that those forms of establishing the movement are important? And also maybe you can combine it, like, how did you start it to be in Via Campesina, and what was a little bit of your trajectory? Thank you. For you, yes. muted maybe.
Okay, so yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting us to be here. We are a bit open to see what this place wants to be, no, and to shape this space together with the ones who are here. No? So I think Fernando already introduced a bit myself. So yeah, I could speak much more, but maybe I don't know, just to say that yeah, I am not originally from the countryside. I'm not a person who was born in farming. No, in farming, I come from a huge city. No, and I had a process of migration. No, and end up here in Germany. And here in Germany, I was also first in the urban areas, and then at some point I had the chance to discover agriculture, to discover the countryside, and to make a conscious option, to choose another way of life, and to choose this way of life also as my political contribution to society, to the planet, and a holistic contribution, let's say. Nowadays I'm a beekeeper, so I'm really happy to see also the bees here with us.
We were cleaning the bees.
And maybe Fernando, actually Anna asked us for a Mystica, but I mean, it's just difficult just like to think about a Mystica just for doing a Mystica, no? And so we thought like we would explain you, how we normally start our meetings, no? So La Via Campesina is a global movement, a grassroots movement. No, it means that we have, it's not a global organization organized top down. We have really our people coming from the grassroots levels, no, and it's a membership-based movement, no. And we come from different cultures, from different territories, with different language, in different contexts, no, autonomous movement, no, and we in this space of global exchange, no, we feel like there are many intersections or many similarities, no, in our different realities, no, in the different territories, but at the same time we don't speak the same language, no. So on one hand, I think Mystica is a way to connect ourselves, no, to connect ourselves beyond the use of words, no, like it's a kind of connection through emotions, through experiences, through
the body as well.
Through the body, no. So using other language, and I think here art is a big part of it, no. And on the other hand, it's also a way to create a collective identity, no. Because I think, emotions, this other language, they shape also ourselves, no? And a third element is that I think it's also a way of acknowledging and thanking nature, no, thanking the universe, no, thanking our fellows, no, for what we get every day. No, it's also a moment of, saying thank you, and they can be very, very powerful, no. And this is normally a way that it's the way we normally start our meetings, no, and so it can be at national level, I mean our local organizations, but also when we have international gatherings, no. It can be, it can be a music, it can be a poem, it can be a short sketch, it can be, sharing words, it can be, there are so many different ways to do a Mystica. It can be very much political, no, or it can be, more on a,
political.
other levels, no. And I think, okay, we are not doing a mystical here today, but maybe we can still give, maybe 1 minute to maybe close your eyes or keep your eyes open, and you just like look around and see what are you thankful about, for being when you are in this space, or when you are, thinking about ruralities, thinking about rural territories in the world today. And maybe just like a moment of grounding, arriving here. Thank you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if some of you would like to share, maybe a word or, feeling, you are welcome to do.
Also without the mic, if you like, Cassidy.
Yeah.
Can be without the mic. Mariana, yes.
No?
I'm thankful for friendship.
I was thinking about night walks that we've been going on, and I was feeling thankful for the light that exists in perceived darkness.
I am thankful for hope.
I'm thankful for community.
Thankful for being together and sharing.
I'm thankful for the trees and the shelter, and the wind.
Silence.
I'm thankful for your visit. I really appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Care and relationships.
I'm thankful for roots, for having roots.
I'm thankful. Thankful for these moments we share.
Yeah, thanks you all for sharing. I don't know, I'll give you the mic and maybe you can say some opening words.
Hi everybody, my name is Tyler. I am from Kentucky in the United States, and I'm an agroecological food producer for my own subsistence purposes, but I also work on a family farm to have my income. I'm really happy to share this moment with you all. And the question of the Mystica is a very important opening question. It's usually a ceremonial act that we'll do together at the beginning of a meeting. I think it's important to acknowledge that we have our flag here. The color green is really a color for me that signifies life. Our movement is a movement that defends life, human dignity, and above all, the basis of our life, which is our Mother Earth. And as we're all sharing, we love night walks, we love our community, our comrades, silence, all of these things. In order to truly be thankful for them, we have to have moments to appreciate them, but then what do we do afterward, right? When we understand that industrial agriculture is destroying our planet and killing us, we have to really unite as a movement, as a global movement, and defend life. We have to defend our community. We have to defend our comrades by taking care of each other. So one of the ideas that I had for a Mystica was to collect flowers, but by taking flowers, we're actually taking the food away from las abejas. So we need to really be considerate of our impact upon this world. And I think for the Mystica, it's really a moment for me coming from the city where I can kind of slow down. I can look at you all in the eye, I can feel the ground, and I can really understand that we're here together. And this is truly necessary because the ego is so strong. All of the pressures and conditioning in society are a little too much sometimes. But when we come together, we do a Mystica as La Via Campesina with our flag, we really understand that we're united in diversity, but we share a common vision, which is food sovereignty.
Thank you.
Great. Well, you explained a little bit of the basis of Via Campesina, the struggle for food sovereignty. As we were saying, food sovereignty is just, well, the possibility of the right of communities to define their food systems. What have you learned in these years in Via Campesina in terms, for example, of organization of the movement? We're talking about a movement that is now, let me think, 30 years old. And that had like itinerant global secretariat. The first one I remember is in Honduras, but it has been moving to Mali and passing by Indonesia. Could you explain a little bit of the form of organization of Via Campesina at global level? Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that we are a diverse movement, as Tyler already mentioned, united in diversity, and and acknowledging these differences and also trying to make this difference our strength. It's not always easy. It's not. We have sometimes some political differences, strategical differences, and all this. And we try to always work on a consensus basis, and being such a different, such a big, huge movement, a diverse movement, consensus is not always easy, it takes time, but when we manage, to find positions, joint positions, then they are really strong, and it's also very powerful, when we can say this is the position, or we are representing over 200 million persons, from the world. I'm not speaking in my name, so this is very powerful, So in terms of structures, as I said, it's a membership-based movement. We have our local and national organizations, and they are all. Each organization is part of a region. The regions, they also have their autonomy. To organize among themselves. So they have their own regional governance bodies. And then we have global coordination committee, and then international coordination committee, and also working groups at the international level. And these working groups, the participants of these working groups, they come from the regions. Yes, as you said, for us it's important also to, to not create, how to say this, not to have structures being how do you say this, like eternizar.
Like the not to install them forever.
Yeah,
or
that
that
there is movement in the movement. That the movement is always also adapting or letting all the regions also to play a leading role rotating this leading role. So what Fernando was saying, that our general office no, or secretariat would rotate. It's also part of that, no. It's on one hand to let each region lead at some point, but it's also to let each region to take responsibility, no, in a certain time. So first it was not Honduras, it was here in Europe, then it went to Honduras, then it went to Jakarta, so Indonesia, then it went to Zimbabwe, and now it's again in Europe, now it's based in France. No? So this rotation is important. I think it's important that, the leadership, you mentioned Paul Nicholson, but it's also important that it's not only Paul Nicholson or Henry Saragi or, Nettie Wiebe or Elizabeth Mopfu. It's important that we have also new generations coming, because, we are not going to be there for long, forever, I mean, no? So I think one very important dimension, I will let Tyler speak more about this, is also to put a lot of, focus also on the coming generations, the youth, like strengthening the youth is a very important basis, let's say, or pillar of our movement. But not only the youth in general, also giving a space for women, for example, to empower themselves, to create their own positions, knowing that we live in a patriarchal society, and Via Campesina is not a movement outside society. So it means that within the movement we also have the reproduction of patriarchal standard, So we have to be conscious about this, and with this consciousness that we reproduce patriarchy inside the movement, we have to actively, work against it. So creating spaces, safer spaces for women. On one hand, to have space of exchange. On the other hand, space of empowerment, space of, creating their own positions, actively shaping also the movement is very important for us, And recently we also started, it's a difficult topic still, but we started also to open up space for people who don't identify themselves, just like me, within the within the binary or gender norm, So creating spaces of gender and sexual diversities within the movement, knowing that this is a topic that, the women had to struggle in the first years of the movement, but they got their space, Now it's our time to struggle, and we are there, and we are shaping this space. We have some backlash, but we are doing advancements, and so maybe also considering that. I wanted to talk about formation, but first maybe I give the space for the youth.
Thank you. Okay, the question on structure of the movement. Since we founded 30 years ago, we developed ourselves twofold movement. We are an oppositional movement, and we're a visionary movement. So this is really important to bring new people in, because we can't just talk about all of the problems that we face in society. We have to be constantly presenting solutions to the world and showing clear examples of what we're doing now, but what we need to continue to do in the future. From the founding of the movement, Via Campesina has been fighting against the World Trade Organization. The WTO and free trade agreements under this regime have destroyed smallholder agriculture and the peasantry around the world. So this is one of our main elements of how we're structuring ourselves. We develop ourselves in what we oppose. So we have collective working groups that follow free trade agreements, the WTO at the global level. We also have collective working groups that fight against agrotoxins and the exploitation of migrant workers. So these thematic working groups are spaces for us to dive deeper into these political topics and present solutions both internally and to the public. Now, our vision, right? We have collective working groups for peasants' rights. Via Campesina in 2018 had a major achievement in the United Nations through a majority vote in the UN Human Rights Council, and then finally a majority vote in the General Assembly. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and Other People Working in Rural Areas is now part of international soft law. This is one of our greatest achievements as a social movement. We also have collective working groups focused on climate justice, agroecology, land and seeds. These are all various spaces for us as individuals to know our particular interests, our strengths, and we can contribute these to collective processes. And it's absolutely important to participate in collective process because it dismantles the ego and you become part of the movement. As Paula mentioned, we also have two articulations, the women's articulation, which is the older, and then the youth articulation, which is a more recent development in the movement. These are distinct from collective thematic working groups. They're more open spaces for women and youth and people of all identities, whether you're gender diverse, sexually diverse, whatever. However we identify ourselves, we self-organize and participate in these spaces. And the importance of these spaces is we develop common priorities and common proposals, and we integrate these into the movement. So we're looking forward to our 8th International Conference next year in Managua, Nicaragua. The youth articulation right now at the global level has a huge task of defining exactly where we are right now in this time of continuing pandemic, a world food price crisis that's largely aggravated by the war in Ukraine. So we have to analyze reality, but we also have to present within the movement exactly what we need. And we have to fight within the movement to claim this space, to claim our rights as youth, because we experience a lot of generational pushback by people who do not really want to give up control within the movement. So this is one of our greatest challenges as youth, is to find ourselves, to connect, but then actually shape the movement.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if there are also questions that you might have. You were going, Paula, to talk about training and being connected to Brazil somehow as well. I've had the chance to learn well from all the different Paulo Freire methodologies and the different schools for agroecology, and MST itself, no, has enormous work on forms of going beyond extension, and it's more of capacity building and so on. So maybe you want to tell us something? I don't know if this is working.
Yeah, I mean, more than talking specifically about Brazil, what I think it's important for us in the movement, as Tyler was saying, we have to be, constantly building capacities, so, and we cannot rely on the formal educational system if we want to make change, because I don't know if everywhere, but in the majority of the place, the formal educational system is very biased and not in the direction that we think is the right way to to build life. Therefore, we started developing our own what we call formation programs. And formation, we don't talk about training, but formation. Formation comes more like from the Latin language, and it's like it's much stronger. You are forming something. You are giving shape. And it's not only something top down. It's like forming together. That's why we are kind of. It's a kind of Spanglish, like, but that for us makes sense, And so it's, Paulo Freire opened many doors, trying to see what are the realities, of the people, and to build, educational programs based on the reality. So it's not something like, so people can connect to, And for us, popular education is also extremely important. Using the language that our people understand. Using examples from their own realities. So I think there are 3 pillars that we have been developing since our last conference. One is that we need to build, to have our own formation programs. The other one is that we need also our own communication channels, and the other one is that we need financial autonomy to be able to do what we think is correct and not what the world is dictating us how to, what to do or what not to do. And I think formation is that there are different kinds of formations. I mean, there is of course technical formation, no, so really learning, I don't know, practical things regarding agroecological praxis, no, but there is also political, ideological formation, no, and all this I would say is part of the formation programs that we develop within the movement, and this can be at local, national level, but also at global level. No, for example, last week we were in Geneva. It was the first time that La Via Campesina, since the outbreak of COVID, had an international meeting. No, we had there international delegation. We were about 30 people from all around. And on one hand, we were for the first time, having strict mobilizations together again, and on the other hand, we had the chance, to form new people to do advocacy work in these global spaces. No, so in this case, we were in the Human Rights Council. So some of us are people who are leaders who have been participating very hardly, and very committed in the achievement of the approval of the Peasant Rights Declaration, no, and others like Tyler were there for the first time, no. So it was a moment to, to try to, through the experience, try to show to the new ones how you do it, but not only in theory, it was practical. So Tyler was also speaking to member states, and of course sometimes we make mistakes, but we don't learn if we don't make the mistakes. No? So I think this is also formation. It's not only to be in a classroom or to be on a field, it's also being in governance spaces and learning how it is. No? So maybe this is a contribution for now. No, Tyler can probably say more.
Also, tell us about your personal training in the transit from the city to being a farmer. Okay. Like how was that? Was a formal training as a farmer? Was in a collective? How it was for you?
Right. The question is on training, formal training and practical training.
Formación.
So I was born in the city of Louisville, Kentucky, in the United States, and I still live there. But I work out in the countryside. The way I entered into agriculture was through my master's research in sociocultural anthropology. I wanted to do a case study on a farm, and I thought that the best way to be in solidarity and actually have quality interviews was to start farming myself. It's a community farm. I had free land access, free water access, tools there, technical assistance there, so I really started to love agriculture, and I've been farming ever since 2015. So formation within the university is much different than formation in a social movement. We push the work, as Paula is saying, is it's the individual study that's mixed within group work, and it's not just like in a classroom. You have to also have community time. So I think that the question of formation is absolutely necessary, especially for young people, because training there's no replacement to training ourselves. There's no replacement to reading or studying and communicating. I don't really have much to add on this. I think Paula covered most of it.
Thank you. Does anyone want to ask, comment, or propose any questions? Jens? Cassidy? Sorry, I don't know why I have two. Thank you, Anna. Maybe you can introduce yourself or the connection with the land.
I don't think this is on. Yeah, is it on? Is it on? Yeah.
Yeah. The closer.
I'm gonna hold it.
No, not like actually.
Yeah,
like
I know,
that,
but then I can.
Yeah.
Oh, technology. I hate it. Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you guys. I'm Cassidy. I sat in, observed the HRC discussions around the peasants' rights when I was working for the Quakers at the UN in Geneva. So it's a real privilege to meet the people who are really advocating for that. So thank you. And my question is related to that, which is that when I was there observing it, I was working within the human rights space more generally, in policy and advocacy, And then I chose to pivot to growing food because I felt, for me personally, as a fully embodied being, that the doing of the thing over the advocacy, for me personally, was a better way of being in the world. For my well-being, predominantly. And so I think my question is, how do you balance that? You are engaged in this because of your care for the planet, but also for this form of labor and the people that do it. And working within any big network discussion system, the UN more than any, takes so much time and talking and labor and travel and constantly explaining and justifying yourself, and all that time could be spent sowing seeds and tending food. And so how do you balance the sense of the global and the local, I suppose, is predominantly what I'm asking. And I suppose I mean on an emotional level as well as on a practical, this is how we make change level, like in your body and your soul and your sense of self. How do you navigate that?
We were speaking about this yesterday.
Okay.
Is it on?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, the question on balance, right? So, growing food takes a lot of work, and if you work on a farm for your employment, it's very rare that you would find an employer that would allow you to travel for a month in Europe to do Via Campesina organizing. However, I'm extremely privileged, and this is my labor arrangement. The agreement when I started working on the farm this year, I've been there for 3 years now, was this year will be a big year. I will have to travel, and I really want to travel, and some of these opportunities come with only 2 weeks in advance. That's exactly how this trip went. Geneva, now I'm here in Germany, and we're going to Rome for policy negotiations in the Committee on World Food Security today. So the question of balance is something that we've been discussing a lot this week. Personally, I like to flip it, right? Like if you're in the grind of wage labor in the capitalist economy, how do you find balance to not like hate your life, right? What do you do to actually find joy and be a human being and not just simply a machine that's generating capital, right? So, and this is how I think of my work really is, yes, farming is great, but what am I doing beyond the farm or beyond just my own income? Contributing to the collective processes in a social movement is one way for me to find that balance. In a really practical sense, a lot of my meetings are in European afternoon. I'm in the Americas, so I wake up early, I have my meetings in the morning, and I go out to the farm and I work all day. I get home, I have tasks to do, but I live alone and it's my lifestyle, it's not a job. So balance it's a question that comes in cycles, right? We have really busy times, the planting season, when you have to weed, different policy processes that come up. You just have to learn to say no to certain things, to know what you're really good at. But really for me, when I find myself slipping on tasks that I'll say I'll do, I am learning that I need to say no to other things, and really focus clearly on a few things that I can do very well rather than trying to do everything. And working on a collective farm is really helpful for that because, you can't do a lot of things in agriculture alone. Same in a social movement, you always need support.
I would like to add, actually this is a question that we have been, yesterday we were in another event and someone also asked us, so we have been dealing with this question sometimes this week. And what I think it's also important to say that at some point there is a level of engagement that cannot be carried by one person alone. So it means if I am in a farm and I have some tasks in my farm, if I'm so committed with now traveling again, I need backup in my farm, and if I don't have this backup, I cannot commit myself that much because it will not work, So I think it's important that to first to acknowledge that, you know, when there is a leader over there, there are many other people behind that they are not visible, but they are the ones carrying also this work. I think this is important. And when I do that because I have at home a community that is carrying it. And the community is carrying it because, you know, there is a common understanding among us that many of our colleagues, they cannot afford it because they cannot leave the farm. So since we are a community with a lot of political understanding and engagement, we put one of us in service of the movement, you know. And I think this is important, you know, this understanding. And yeah, and in terms of balance, Tyler already said no, to learn to say no, also to learn to, you know, to care for yourself, you know, what are my own boundaries, you know, it's not always easy, you know. Also to, you know, to leave the ego behind, because don't let the ego, you know, grow big. No, this is not easy for many people. No, because then you started receiving invitations, and you see your name everywhere. But it's not a struggle of a person; it's a collective struggle. So it's also important to, you know, to be able to share invitations. You know, but for that again, training is important. That other persons are also able to take it up. No. So caring about oneself and about the others, you know, learning your own boundaries, your limits, learning to say no. All this, for me, is part of this balance that we have to find.
It's really important to just emphasize the point that we have to find like what makes us happy and like really go into that. And along the way, you'll find things that don't make you so happy, but as Paula says, there's an element of individual sacrifice that has to happen for any collective good to come to fruition. You have to give up a little bit of yourself. But it's a huge honor and privilege to participate in La Via Campesina. And so, yeah, I find a lot of joy in it. And in this sense, finding balance is not too hard for me.
One more thing, like, because you were speaking about I don't know, I heard a bit like frustration about this kind of global spaces, no? And that you decided like going more into a like grounded experience of growing food.
I think I started to feel like, what if it wasn't true that you had to sacrifice a bit of yourself for the greater good? What if a world in which everyone truly was supported and emancipated to do what they are genuinely drawn to, if that might be a greater world? And I say that obviously from a ludicrous position of privilege to be able to make that choice through race and gender identity and all of those things. But I was in the activism, martyrdom matrix for a while, and felt a lack of exactly what you're saying, which is the joy in activism. I wasn't necessarily sure if I was in spaces in which the joy had any room left to breathe. And working on a farm is hard, and working on climate damaged territories is exhausting. And also, I never have a day when I don't feel joy when I'm in the land, and that was not my experience of spaces which are less about, well, more about talking than about doing, recognizing there's a relationship between those two things.
Yes, and I think I can understand what you mean, because for me, myself, no, sometimes it is frustrating to be in some of this space, no? It is frustrating to be speaking sometimes with the feeling I'm speaking against a wall, you know? There are member states that they are just like horrible, you know? But I don't know, I think it is, what gives me hope is, you know, to see very small steps and developments, you know, knowing that the work that I'm doing is not for tomorrow, that the work that I'm doing are just seeds, and they will flow at some point. The United Nations declarations on the rights of peasants and other people working in rural areas, the work started 20 years before it was finally approved. And so many of us were part of this. Fernando was there as well, so it was not only La Via Campesina, it was an entire movement, and I think here this is important as well. It's not Via Campesina alone. We have to create alliances, and in this case, we were creating alliances with all other social movements of people who live and work in rural areas, pastoralists, fishers, indigenous people, rural women, rural youth organizations, land workers. All they participated in all these negotiations in the Human Rights Council, bringing their lived experience. And after so many years of struggle in this space, we saw it coming through. So yeah, it might be frustrating in the very moment that we are there, but for me it's like having the hope that at some point there will be successes. There will be many backlashes, but believing that it's not for now, it's not for today, but it is for the future generations. That's what keeps me moving and doing the work.
Yeah, regarding the capacity of participation, I also realize that for many pastoralists it's really difficult also to be connected and to be taking part in the movement and the required opportunities to gather and to influence. Also to be lost in the world bureaucracy. I think it's also very difficult to see the immediate impact of the very long processes. I wanted to ask you also as well about the forms of solidarity that Via Campesina are allowing between countries. For example, now in Wamip we see the eviction of Maasai pastoralists from Loliondo, is in Tanzania, and the army entered and displaced around 2,000 pastoralists just to create a safari center and national park. And I wonder how, for example, Via Campesina finds a consensus regarding for example, the situation in Palestine. We have been trying to, despite the ongoing debate in Germany about accusations of anti-Semitism in this documenta, to leave aside the importance to look at the need of show solidarity with the situation in other countries and specifically for the farmers in Palestine. So I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about how do you discuss on these specific urgencies and emergencies when they happen, and if you have experience on having to react on that and finding a position.
So first of all, I think, as I said, we are not a top-down movement. So normally, the need are expressed by a region. There is I don't know, a catastrophe. It can be political, it can be climatic, it can be whatever. So it's not like from outside the region that we decide now we want to do that. Because the ones in the region are the ones who best know the reality and also what they need. So sometimes we think we want to show solidarity with someone, but we don't know if this is good or safe for them. So we have to hear very well what they need. So this is very important. So when there is a need for solidarity, normally there is a call for solidarity that comes from the very reality, expressing what they need, and based on that, we try to find the agreements as quick as possible. Sometimes it's about having a public statement. Sometimes it's about needing to give, to protect a person. Sometimes it's about giving financial means for whatever. So there are different kinds of solidarity. Sometimes it's about doing advocacy work in certain spaces. So it depends very much on what it is about, no? And I would say the majority of the times it's not very controversial, no? But I can give a very current example where it is difficult. The issue of the Ukraine, no, it is a very difficult situation, no, where there are many geopolitical interests behind it, you know. Ukraine, or Russia in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, has a very bad reputation. I mean, Russia was, the Soviet Union was traumatic for many of the countries in Eastern Europe, no? So Russia is an empire, no? And this, you know, so we could say that for Eastern Europe, Russia is what the US is for Latin America, you know. So when there's a call here from Europe for solidarity with the peasants in Ukraine, a huge discussion was launched in Via Campesina, because our Latin American comrades, they are still looking for socialism, and Russia is this model somehow, no? So it is sometimes like the enemies, they are not the same just because the context is a different one, no? And in those moments, it's not very easy to find consensus, no? And we need time for the process, so we cannot react very quickly, no? So urgent as we would like to, no? So a huge political discussion was initiated in the movement because in the end what we want is like to support the Ukrainian peasant farmers, no? So yeah, sometimes consensus are difficult when geopolitical things are also part of it, no? But again, when we manage to do that, to get to this point, then we are strong. So it might take time, but then it's strong. Yeah.
What we could do is to take a round of questions or comments, please, Husam, because you have to leave in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So
20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes. So we take a round of points and questions, and yes.
Thank you. Actually, I just wanted to comment on what you were saying. Like, just came to my mind like what Palestinian farmers are facing every day in Palestine, and the whole movement of the world, like how they deal with the issue of Palestine. We're talking about Ukraine and about different places. I don't know like how much is it connected with the policy of the country and how they define. So like we don't have really much solidarity from these movements around the world, and what's going on is very clear. Like farmers get attacked, their trees are cut in, like to cut the olive trees and to burn them alive, and to attack the shepherd with dogs and with drones. Like even you'll find a settler and just send his drone to attack the sheep. Like so the flock is getting crazy. So yeah, like I'm just reflecting openly like with you all that sometimes like looking on the world and where they are like to going for like a good place and with consuming and with farmers, but at the same time there is a lot of things going on every day, and even we are the whole world is still like how we call it, should we call it like this, which term we use, but there is not really appearance of support or even like raising awareness through what's going there. So I'm just like sharing with you, and I'm happy that I'm here with you.
More comments?
Hello, thank you so much. Nice to meet you all.
You want to
Hi.
introduce you?
My name is Dharmendra Prasad. I'm from India, and I don't know, it's a question or observation or curiosity, but I would love to know more about the movement, and I just wanted to give a comment and question that it's a very specific, it's coming from a very specific kind of condition and context, the Indian agrarian condition and the caste hierarchy, rural exodus, and the policies and the laws that the Indian state is making to support the big corporations in the to get entry into the Indian agrarian structure, and how your movement is getting or looking at it, or is there any points or windows for you to get into that, or what is the present condition of the movement and in relation to the Indian agrarian structure and the caste system as well, and the unequal distribution of the land, which is also a very big problem in the Indian agriculture. Yeah, thank you.
You touched on this a little bit, but I'm interested in how you build solidarity within the network, because although you're all fighting for a similar cause, the realities of people in different countries are different, and so I'm curious how you share your stories and how you build solidarity in that way, coming from different experiences, although you're all fighting for a similar common goal.
Comment from my side, also a question. How Via Campesina is relating with the idea, or with the fact that in many rural areas, especially, many rural areas in the world, the feeling of disaffection from global neoliberalism is facilitating the access for authoritarian populisms to have a bigger influence. No, we saw it with Trump. We see it in India. It's not exactly now, but at a certain point. And how do you think this could evolve in the future?
Cool. Okay, the situation in Palestine is extremely troubling. Coming from the United States, which is a country founded on settler colonialism and the attempted genocide of indigenous peoples, we have to really learn from the situation in Palestine, and it's a current example of an attempted genocide and large-scale land theft, supported through a number of mechanisms. So this is obviously clear. As a U.S. citizen, though, I think the point that I should make with regard to this is that we have to hold our governments accountable. The U.S. government is one of the most violent governments in the world, truly one of the greatest violators of human rights in this world, and we have to hold the government accountable for their support for the criminal Israeli occupation of Palestine. There's no other option except to unite, to raise our voice, to advocate for public policies. There are other avenues to then construct solidarity, exchanges with farmers, to just share experiences, going to visit and doing work in Palestine is one example. In the broader question of solidarity, I think this is really interesting. The word solidarity indicates that there is a unit that is solid. It's a solid whole, but it's actually kind of false in the sense that there's always going to be difference in any group, right? So we have to have space for debate to actually understand what we agree on and where we diverge, and only through debate can we really construct solidarity. I think the case in India is interesting because you noted land inequalities, and popular agrarian reform is one of the central objectives of La Via Campesina. It really depends on the local and national territorial context. I don't know much about India, but I mean, land reform for us means land is too concentrated in the hands of a few, and in order to have a future for the smallholder peasantry, we need land reform now. and not just simply access to land, but the ability collectively to democratically control this land. And then I guess in terms of the threats of authoritarian populism, this is a contradiction that the working class really has to figure out, is how we are going to combat the rise of fascism around the world. People that are very disillusioned with the capitalist economy. They're looking for something to connect to, whether it's a fascist like Trump or some other fascist movement. So I honestly, it's too much for me as a participant in VIA to think about winning people over that are already organized in right-wing movements. I think the more strategic question for us is to build stronger connections in the working class, within the peasantry, and really build class power that way. And class conflict is a natural part of the society, and we can't avoid that. But building class power and class-based alliances is the only way to really combat the rise of authoritarian fascism. Yeah.
Maybe going back to the question about India, I mean, our organizations in India, they have been deeply involved in the whole farmers movement, no? That the struggles that they were, I don't know, over almost 1.5 years on the streets, no? You know, struggling for the reforms of the constitution that the government just passed from one day to the other, no, which would dismantle a lot of their territorial markets and so on. And you know, the Indian farmers, the Indian peasant farmers, they are actually an example for the global community of peasants, you know, in Via Campesina, because what they did, you know, being 1.5 years, I don't remember exactly, but it was very, very long, on the streets just before COVID outbroke, you know, then the pandemic came, they were there, no? In the beginning, a lot of males, but then later on also the women started to come. They started they were not only the farmers, you know, they started building social movements with other sectors, you know. What they built in India and what they achieved, they managed, you know, to how to say that the government would withdraw, no, the laws that they passed, no. This is for us a major victory in the recent peasant struggles globally, and yeah, and we have to learn quite a lot from them, and you know, and we are actually maybe Fernando, we should speak about this now, no, before we close. The you know, the next La Via Campesina and other social movements were key in building this movement for food sovereignty globally, no? And this is a movement that is not only, although La Via Campesina coined this concept and this, you know, the vision of food sovereignty, this is no longer something, you know, carried only by La Via Campesina. There are all these other, you know, food producers movement, and also consumers, and other organizations that really share these values, carrying this movement, no? And we have the understanding that it's time now to come together again, you know, because the world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. We are in a moment where, you know, oh, it's so loud. I'm hearing myself. Can thank you. So it's a moment to, you know, to rebuild strategies, no, and part of our understanding or analysis is that we have to be able to build alliances beyond the movements which are already engaged in the food sovereignty movement. We have to think much more intersectionally, no? Build movement, you know, and build strategies of transformations, radical transformations, I don't know, with much stronger, with, for example, with the climate movement, with the students movement, anti-war movement, feminist movements, and you know, there are so many movements over there, and many of them, they are organized very different than how we organize. Artists, no? So we are calling for a new global food sovereignty process, what we call Nileni process. It's part of our history to name it Nileni. Because it's the first Nileni Forum, which took place, food sovereignty movement, which took place 2007, was in a place called Nileni. So we carried the name of this place with us, and we are starting to organize a new forum for 2024, most probably. And I think this is an opportunity also to to invite you to be part of that. I think Fernando can most probably be a reference person for many of you here, and so to see how we can build these alliances together, how can we build these strategies for transformations in face of the current reality, and how can these different intersectional perspectives contribute to this change, So I welcome you all to be part of this. Here in Europe, I'm also one of the focal points, but maybe just like for practicalities, I guess many of you know Fernando, so it could be a first reference, and then you forward to us. Welcome. I would be very happy to see you soon again, and start really to work together really on concrete steps here in the region, in Europe and Central Asia, but also much beyond.
Thanks so much. Well, you should say like one La Via.
Maybe we can.
Yeah, finalize this.
Maybe we can finalize. Just saying that we have several. How to say this? Slogans. Yeah, we have several slogans in La Via, and one I think important one, and maybe the most used and maybe also the most powerful thing is that we have this understanding that it's important. To stand against globalization. So it's also playing with the words. What we actually need is to globalize our struggle, so we can globalize also the hope. The hope for a new society. So I would say globalize the struggle, and you could repeat globalize hope. So globalize the struggle.
Globalize hope.
Globalize the struggle.
Globalize hope.
That's it. Thank you.
Did you try this? They're ready. Thank you for the discussion.
Thanks to you. We didn't have the chance to talk about the UNFS for next time. Do you have time to check a little bit inside? We have a video of our pastoralist colleague.
I saw that there is an exhibition there, but we were walking around, and it was really nice. We had a nice time together. Also, these moments to interact.
Yes. But do you have a minute now, just to show you inside, or are you leaving?
We have to leave here
5 minutes. Also, if you want some
10
cheese,
minutes maybe.
we brought our cheese there. So if you want some cheese, are you hungry?
I could snack on something. Yeah.
Did you take any cheese actually for lunch?
I rubbed it up. I don't know if there's any. Adri might know.
About the cheese, Adri? Sorry? Yeah, now the debate here is very crazy. It's all documented.